Saudi Arabia without us touching anything on the Palestinian issue. Okay, this is first. And second of it is the question of the spread of the Wahhabi trend, the Islamic religion. So we hear the bin Salman, the heir of the throne, who is speaking about modernization and perhaps changing the attitude, to also reforming the Islam. Do we actually see anything in this regard as to spread of Wahhabism also in East Africa, in Southeast Asia, where the Saudi money, from what I know, still goes and funds a lot of the really radical streams? Please.
Thank you. Sorry for sticking to my notes. In April 1996, Prime Minister Shimon Peres landed in the Doha International Airport and was welcomed by the Qatari Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani. While the national anthem Tikva was played in the background. That year, as Xani said, an Israeli embassy was established in Qatar and Oman. It was officially called a trade office, but that was only cover name for its actual mission, which was to develop bilateral diplomatic ties. Looking back, that was the closest that Israel had ever reached in its relations with the Gulf. And it was only due to the peace process that was still led by Peres and to bold leaders on both sides. Today, even though bold leaders exist in the Gulf, the absence, as Professor Moss said, of an Israeli-Palestinian peace process sets a stiff glass ceiling for any progress in the relations with Israel. That obvious fact should be stated in any discussion that deals with Israel-Gulf relations and with any Israel-Arab relations, as we heard before. And I titled my lecture today as Waiting for an Action. I think that's the bottom line. Over the last year, me and my colleagues were working on a project led by Midwin Think Tank to map and characterize the existing cooperation and the potential for cooperations between Israel and various Arab states. Comparing the findings was very interesting. Unlike the surrounding countries to Israel, which experience high intensity in their affairs with Israel, whether we refer to peace deals or to violent confrontations, the further circle of countries gets to choose which would be their attitude toward Israel. Now, focusing on the Gulf countries, it appears that there is a great variety of standpoints and attitudes, which differs between different countries and different periods of time. Having said that, we can see some similarities in this comparison. For example, all of these countries see themselves as hubs to the war. They act to bring the war to their territories and to host international conventions, conferences, competitions, and so on. This position places the Gulf countries in a great dilemma concerning their position to Israel. Since being an international host requires to accept Israel as a legitimate participant. Last October, the Israeli judo team competed in an international tournament in Abu Dhabi. The participation of the Israeli delegation was restricted under one condition: not to wear any national symbols. Yeah, and that in this tournament, Tal Flicker, the Israeli judoist, won a gold medal. And the anthem that was played in the background was the anthem of the International Judo Association. While Tal was singing, you can see his lips moving according to Hatikva. That was very moving. But that is a sort of the status quo, the model that both sides agree to in participating in this event, or accepting Israel. It shows that the Gulf countries are being open and pragmatic in that sense. However, they will accept the Israelis only when they have no choice. That's the common glass ceiling that we encounter with the states. They prefer to accept Israel participation in order to avoid criticism by the international community and perhaps a ban from hosting international events. However, at the same time, they act to keep the visits as low profile as possible in order to avoid criticism from the Arab community. Another similarity between the Gulf countries in their relations with Israel derives from their ambition to have a significant political influence in their foreign policies and that's to your question about their involvement in other places in the Middle East, especially with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. Their economic advantages obviously serve as a tool to achieve that goal and to spread long arms into the Middle East and worldwide. The Arab Peace Initiative, which was brought up before, from 2002, is actually a Saudi statement of power and status to position itself as a regional leader. Their international and regional importance plays a significant factor that Israel just cannot ignore if it wants to be a part of the opportunities that their power brings with them. Now, in a nutshell, there are very specific fields in which the Gulf countries would deepen their collaboration with Israel. One is business, the second is technology, and the third is security, which in most cases go together in one package. There are also some positive encounters which do not imply on the general attitude. Some which can be stated are the religious Bahraini delegation to Israel, you probably know about it. Diplomatic meetings between high-level politicians. For example, in 2012, Prime Minister Netanyahu met secretly with the United Arab Emirates Minister of Foreign Affairs during the United Nations Assembly, and they both spoke about the Iranian nuclear threat. And there was also an open discussion panel between the former head of Mossad, Ephraim Halevi, and the Saudi Prince Turki Al Faisal, which was the head of the intelligence offices in the country. And lately we hear about the Saudi, Egyptian, Israeli triangle. And these things happen, but they are rare. Once they occur, they are perceived very fondly by the Israeli crowd and very suspiciously by the other side. So that is something that we should mention. The greatest taboo in these relations can actually be found in the civil arena. Relatively to the diplomatic and economic ties, even if they exist under the table, the civilian cooperation is as close to zero. That is a glass ceiling that is very hard for Israel to break. I've tried myself to pave a path for academic and touristic collaborations, for example, but we are too far away from achieving any legitimization to act in these fields. The mutual interests for collaboration are obvious: opposition to Iran and radicalism, international legitimization and status, and greater influence for both sides. But in a scale between mutual interests and the reluctance to step forward without solving the Palestinian issue, I think that the latter has a greater impact on Israeli-Gulf relations. One last thing that it's worth to mention in my 7 minutes is that the new axis of powers in the region that also influence these relations. The confrontation between Qatar and its neighbors had a side effect of pushing away the historical ally Qatar and bringing Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and other states closer to Israel. From the one hand, it's easier to collaborate with pragmatic countries other than ideological partners, but from other hand, even this pragmatism cannot fully break the glass ceiling that Israel faces in its relations with its neighbors in the Middle East.
Thank you so very much, Moran. So before we will open the floor to questions, I would like to shortly from each of you to perhaps react on the remarks of the other participants, and also a general question. From now on, 2018, we are celebrating 70 years of our independence. Where do we go from here with the relations with our close neighbors, with neighbors who are perhaps not so close, but quite threatening, such as Iran? If you can touch that, and in general, so are we looking to exception, even if it's by force, of Israel in the family of the Middle East? Or is it a continuation, a form of continuation of what you mentioned as a rejection of legitimization of Israel's existence here? So please, Moshe.
Thanks very much. To Tzvi is right, is correct that Arab textbooks are full of hatred and anti-Semitism. But so are Israeli textbooks, not the secular, religious one. I'm telling you things that I did research about Arabs, about Muslims drawing back on all kinds of expression from the Torah and the Talmud. You know, there is a saying in Hebrew about the Torah, "Afoch ba v'afoch ba dechulei ba." You can turn it back and forward. You can find whatever you want. You have good things, bad things. Amalek. Amalek is equated to the Palestinians. And again, this is unfortunately the culture. They are inferior to us. We are the masters, they are inferiors, and they are slaves. And this, even Ishmael has different connotation as a wild person, as a terrorist. Your interpretation of what was in, and again, I'm telling you because based on research, I'm not telling you stories. So this is it, and I believe that if the issue will be settled, I mentioned Jerusalem, Haram Sharif, Temple Mount, things will change because there are religious sections. You generalize all Muslims. No. I visited Indonesia several times, largest Muslim country. And I talked to Abu Rahman al-Wahid. He was the head of Na'datul Ulama, the largest Muslim organization, 60 million. They have a very moderate, pragmatic view to Israel. And there are many, many others. Not to mention that not Muslims are, all Muslims are religious. Many of them are secular. And the elites also have interest in peace with Israel. But again, the crux is the crux. And lastly, about cooperation with Egypt, which you know very well. I have read the book, one of the books, of Shimon Shamir, a friend, a colleague of mine, professor in Tel Aviv. He was ambassador, goes to Egypt and Jordan, and he said, and not only him, that so many projects between Israel and Jordan didn't go through because of Israel. Why? Why? Given this issue, and not to speak about the spies, the disdain that the Israeli leaders reflected to Arab leaders. Again, Shimon Shamir said it, not me. So there is a cultural issue here. I repeat it again and again. Many of us don't feel that we are part of this area. We look down on this area. We are European. We are advancing the Christian Judeo civilization. How about the Judeo-Islamic, Judeo-Arab civilization, which was great, especially in the medieval time, but now we can revive it too, not at the expense of the other. We don't do it.
Well. Let us not fall in self-delusion. Please. 70 years of relations, non-relations with other countries should have 70 years of relation or non-relations with other countries should have taught us something about what's going on around us. Now, Palestinian problem. There is a problem. Even we know that there are no Palestinian people, still there is a problem because Arab exists here. This issue needs a solution, okay? But you cannot solve a problem on lies. You cannot solve a political problem on lies. And the Palestinians, or what we call Palestinians, present to us lies. And they completely deny the existence of the legitimacy of Israel. That's the real problem. All of you know the history. You know how it started, as from the Balfour Declaration to the Peel Committee, plan of partition, etc., etc., etc. So we have to ask ourselves why the Palestinian problem is always at the head of any Arab who speaks to you. So I'll tell you. Because those lies, this poison is being transmitted to them through Islam and Pan-Arabism. Because what is the knowledge of a Muslim in Malaysia about the Palestinians? Zero. What is the knowledge of an Egyptian farmer, Falah, about Israel? Zero. What is the knowledge about an Algerian citizen about Israel? Zero. My chauffeur in '82, when I arrived as a counselor, in 1980, we arrived to open the embassy. I was in the team who opened the embassy. So I took a chauffeur, a nice fellow, we became friends. And when people started to speak about Palestine, peace, he asked me two questions. Brace yourself. What is this Palestine? When people speak about this, what it is exactly? He was not a university man, but he finished school. Okay, he finished fundamentals at the first school.
High school.
Not high school, but
Elementary.
So, and then he asked me when we completely withdrew from Sinai, he asked me Sinai di Feina Biza. You speak Arabic?
You speak.
Feina Biza. This is the real thing in Egypt. This is the real story of the Arab world. They are being poisoned. They are being lied by the elites who are either Islamic or nationalists from the school of Nasser. We should understand this. Now, we have to fight for normalization, for good relations, for peace, and we do it, absolutely. But how can we turn this obstacle? It's a cultural obstacle, ideological obstacle, religious obstacle. This is the story of our life. Now to speak about Egypt today, I believe, and I wrote dozens of articles about it in Jerusalem Post, maybe some of you read me, that Sisi is really the best for Egypt and even for us. He's doing in Egypt a wonderful thing, a really wonderful thing. He's going into the mega projects, hoping that it will not drizzle, but come back to the people with time. Because he's doing something really wonderful from the economic point of view, and the percentage of growth, of economic growth in Egypt is now about 4%. It should be 7%, but it's a very, very good beginning. Now, this man, a few months after he was elected president in 2014, he went to the Al-Azhar and he told the people of Islam, ulama, listen, Islam is not really adapted to our world of 21st century. Change it. The narrative is really bad, because you'd like to conquer the world and Islamize the world. It will be accepted. It will not be accepted. Please do something about it. They said, till now, 3 years later, they've done nothing, and they said we cannot do it absolutely because there is no change in Islam. This is Sharia once and for all, etc., etc., etc. So he's a good man from every point of view. He's putting some journalists in prison. I don't like it. And his record of human rights is not the best, but this is a Muslim country. After 1400 years of Islam, no country can be democratic. No human rights in Islam. They have been raised on the Sharia. The Sharia is a law forever, given from God, one man or one God. You see. So I mean, the gap of a cultural civilization between us and the Egyptian and the Muslim is huge, and is not going to be covered probably in the 50 or 100 years. I'm sorry to say, but this is my way. This is my way of thinking after having read books, thousands of papers in the last 20 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not optimistic, but very sincere. It's more on you.
Okay.
I would like to comment one thing about Judaism in the eyes of Islam, continuing what Professor Maoz said. I start from an anecdote. An Israeli journalist that back visited the Shlucha of branch of the Louvre Museum in Abu Dhabi, and he saw an artifact with Hebrew script on it, and he was so astonished and wrote an article about it in Israel Hayom, and he was really shocked. And the title of his article was "Will the Gulf states accept Jewish people? The Jewish people, are they now fond of the Jewish people?" And I've been a year before there, and I went to a different museum, which was already there. It is called the Crossroad of Civilizations, and I saw their sword with Magen David on it, and a note from the Torah, and all kinds of Jewish, Hebrew things there. And I realized, and I asked the owner of the museum, how can you present Jewish artifacts here in your museum? And he said, we have no problem with the Jewish people. We have only a problem with the Israeli policy regarding the Palestinians. And this is something that we should remember. I'm not talking about the theoretical gap between, or confrontation between Islam and Judaism. I'm talking about real politics, and I'm talking about what the people, at least in the Gulf, feel about the Jewish people. And we also saw in the Haaretz an article of Sultan Qasimi, a very important figure in the Emirates, which wrote black and white that he called his fellow Arab countries to embrace the Jewish people and to bring them back their identity of
Identity.
yes, of those who fled from the Arab countries. And according to what he said, that there is no problem with the Jewish people, there's only a problem with the policy of Israel. So this is something that we always have to distinguish.
If he forgot to read the Quran and the Hadith and the Cyril Nabouya, I mean,
Well, again,
this is
that's
not
the gap
really.
between theoretical thinking.
Listen, mademoiselle or madame.
Zvi, the Quran
you
and the
can-
other things too.
You cannot say it. I read a few hundred of thousand hadiths. I
Zvi, I'm
read the
sorry,
Sirah
I'm sorry,
Nabouya.
but let-
I read the
let-
Quran.
all right.
I
We will
mean,
give
they
you the
hate the
opportunity
to
Jews
answer
because
this.
they hate the Jews.
You are not-
I'm glad to have
It's
this
a fact.
discussion, but in real life,
Let us speak.
you see thousands, maybe I'm exaggerating, but hundreds of Jewish people working and living in the Gulf countries. How can you explain that?
I'll tell you.
The Quran, they go to the Quran and they...
It was not an open question, it was a rhetorical
No.
Okay. So,
one last thing about what we said about the importance of Qawmiya, the urban nationalism.
I call it.
And there is the constant struggle between the Qawmiya, the Wataniya, which is Arab nationalism, versus the state nationalism, and the sectarianism, which might be religious or anything. And throughout the last 100 years, we saw that the state always won. And we have to speak with states. Sometimes when Arab Spring erupts or something like that, we think that maybe we can talk with this wing or this sectarian party, but finally we see that states are always on the upper hand, and we should always remember. So when we think on future deepening relations between Israel and Arab countries, we should remember always to go to the countries and not to the supranational thinking or the sectarian inside the countries. Yeah.
thank you so very much for that. We'll take questions now. Please, if you have questions, let us, focus on the question. It's not the remarks that we would like to hear so much from you now because they are limited in time, but please go ahead with the questions. Yossi, you are raising head. Yes? Please. Yossi
A small
Nesher.
remark, not just now, always, my name is Yossi Nesher, Israeli Radio Arab.
Kol Israel בערבית.
Kol Israel
Yossi Nesher
בערבית.
from the Israeli Radio Arab.
I asked myself,
veteran
why
correspondent
an
and very
event like this, there isn't any Arabic spoken invited. I don't think it's so difficult. And I asked myself if it's by a coincidence or it's an expression of the fact that we like especially to listen to ourselves. We prefer monologue on dialogue. And actually what, let's say, designate our foreign policy is actually more internal policy needs. That's my remark.
Okay, Uri, you would like to address it?
We got a couple of questions like this. Good question. Since we didn't focus on us and the Palestinians, in that case, it would have been easy to bring a Palestinian speaker. Here we're talking about we can't bring an Egyptian speaker or somebody from the Gulf. but I think you get a good sense of what's going on from these people. That's our answer.
By the way, the four of us here are Arabic speakers, huh? So, yes, please. Just if you can mention your name.
Yeah, I'm David Krasman. I'd like to ask Ambassador Mazel, taking into account what you said, what would be the effect on Egypt if there were to be at least a political solution between Israel and the Palestinians? Would it have no effect whatsoever?
אנחנו נאסוף כמה שאלות. We'll take a few questions and then we'll address a few of them. Okay, please.
Hi, Adam Hoffman. Just have a brief comment. I submit the recent events, Syria in general, the Syrian war, also the recent events that happened earlier in this month between the Israeli Air Force and the Syrian forces are more specifically are also pushing, perhaps changing perceptions in Syria and the broader Arab world regarding Israel. You probably all know this, but you might have heard that Faisal Qasem, the very famous journalist from Al Jazeera, he published a poll on his Twitter account almost 2 weeks ago, and asking on the same day of the skirmishes between the Israeli Air Force and the Syrian positions that had there been a war between Israel and the Iranian militias in Syria, who do you vote for? Who do you endorse? Who do you support? Asking just his Twitter followers, and interestingly enough, 56% of those responses, 56% were voting or supporting Israel. So this is also hypothetical, and I think that it's also a very tactical, position. It's not, it's not a tadbir, but it's something which points to the fact that there are shifting perceptions of Israel as the enemy, given the context of Iranian expansionism in Syria. So this is also, a small change, but it could also correct broader changes in the region.
Thank you. And we'll take a third question, then we'll open the panel door.
My name's Karen Freeman. My question is about the Palestinians. The more I read the press in the UK and various other European countries, the more I read the crux of all the problems in the Middle East is the problem with the Palestinians and Israel's refusal to deal with it. I'm interested, I don't believe that it is the crux of everything, but I'm interested to hear what these people say because they know a lot more than me.
Okay, so I would like to start now with Moran. And okay, so Tzvi and then...
Okay, the Palestinian problem. Yes, it's very easy for the Arabs and for the Europeans to speak about the Palestinian problem. But they are lying to us, the Palestinians, the Arabs and the Europeans, because we know the history. We know the history. You cannot forget it. And you journalists, you have a certain responsibility, because Palestinians keep saying, Israeli don't want peace. Israeli don't want peace. Okay, I was born here, brought here, I went through the big Arab rebellion in the 30s. And I was a baby at that time. And then the war of independence and whatever, the partition plan and everything. So all that is forgotten by the Arabs themselves, by the Europeans, as you say. So there is a problem of lying, of denying reality in the Middle East. Now, for your question, let us say that there is a solution, a settlement between us. I don't believe it. It's not going to happen. Don't worry. Maybe it will facilitate in theory, for Sisi to promote normalization with Israel. It will be, but it will not change Al-Azhar. It will not change the Muslim Brothers. It will not change the Pan-Arabist Nasserist school of people, etc., etc. So, okay, there will be some change, but it's not going to change neither Islam nor Arabism. And you spoke about Wataniya, Qawmiya, okay, this is a wonderful thing. But there is a Arab feudalism, tribalism, that explains why Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Somalia, Libya exploded like that. This is the story. They cannot live in democracy in organized country. You should understand it, but we try to deny it. So, if ever it's being solved in the next few years, maybe if Sisi in power will promote something, kind of normalization with that, but it's not going to change the Arabs or the Muslim Arabs. This is the real story. This is when you keep reading Arab literature, okay? What they say, what they write, what they say in the television, you have no, oh, you are right from time to time. There is a wonderful article saying, in the Saudi press especially, even the Egyptian press, once, twice a year, listen, look, we Arabs, we have 300 million, and look at our situation, it's so bad, terrible, nothing, zero. This small country of Jews, they are wonderful, they are high-tech, etc. So, okay, there is some people who say it, but it does not change anything, all that. And the fact is, you spoke about 70 years. We tried 70 years to do something, and nothing happened.
Please, Moshe.
Oh, I envy you.
Very tough to you. I'm very tough for you.
You are not tough at all. You are very lousy. I envy your very strong views. You know everything. You know there is never going to be peace. You know that. Wow, you're
after 70 years, I have the right to draw some conclusion.
You can have the right to say whatever you want, but whether they are correct or not, you're talking about 300, 400 million Arabs. 2 billion Muslims, all of them are anti-Semitic, hate Israel. I mentioned so many issues like in Indonesia. Do you know about dialogues, hundreds of dialogues between Muslim muftis, imams, and rabbis, all over the place, in New York, here and there. And they are weak because of the more militants, but it's not a one picture. And as I said, there are many secular people there. Now, who are you to say there is no Palestinian people? Who are you? I mean, they have to define themselves if they are Palestinians or not. As I say, that no, people used to say there is no Jewish people. Well, nobody can decide for us whether or not. The same thing they have, and there is a Palestinian people, whether you like it or not. Anyway, about Syria, you mentioned Syria, you're right. Things change all the time, and in Syria, the civil war there, the terrible war, a growing number of Syrians changed their perception about Israel after all this propaganda. And they see, as you say, they see Israel as a partner. Things are not on the standstill, and people are not donkeys. They change their mind, sometimes to the bad, sometimes in a favorite way. So, and this is a work for the Palestinians. I still believe, I've been working on this a long time, this is the crux of it. Yes, there were periods that they wanted to eliminate us, including the countries. Things have changed because of Israeli power, because of American support, because of balance of power, because of interest, and so on and so forth. It's not yet, as I said, real, genuine reconciliation. And in order to reach it, I think we have to settle it, and we can do it. You know why? Because we are strong now. Not now, from 67. We can defeat all Arab countries together. Are we afraid of the Palestinians? Yes, there are dangers, there are risks, but we are strong enough to take the risk because of our own good. Not only Palestinians, but our own good. Do you want to be an apartheid state? Or if we give them a democracy, Tzvi is not going to give them democracy to the Arabs, we're going to become another Arab state, the 22nd state. We want to be a Jewish democratic state with Arab minority, and they can be a bridge between, because they know both cultures. We don't think about it. Yes, we have a great deal, but not enough. You can tell from the Knesset. Thank you.
Okay, so I will just add shortly, Adam's observation was very interesting. So when Faisal Al-Qasem, who is a journalist on Al Jazeera,
Arabic.
Well, Arabic, of course, yes. And when I speak about Al Jazeera, for me, it's first of all, it's of course Arabic Al Jazeera, because this is the real power, the real impact. And for me, it's no question about whether he's affiliated himself with the Muslim Brotherhood or not, but certainly the organization, this called Al Jazeera, promotes the values of this of the Muslim Brotherhood. So it reminds me, that he had a poll with his Twitter supporters. I don't know who they are, and there's no way to find out, and to say, who are these people. But I remember very well that in the beginning of the civil war in Syria, there were a few members of some Sunnist militias, with this name or other name, they changed names, so they were shouting, and they made themselves the selfies, with this shouts that the Assad army that was butchering them, they're worse than Jews. Okay, so the sentiment that he's the ultimate worst, he's even worse than Jews. It's no compliment to us, okay? Not at all, okay? I would say that I'm not being thrilled by this kind of things when I'm here like, oh God, yes, there's somebody who's worse than me. Okay, no, so I don't think there is a major change. Today was an article in Haaretz about how the Syrian refugees that were brought in total anti-Semitism and hatred of Israel are being taught lessons about the Holocaust in order to, break a little bit these patterns of thinking, and it will take a lot of time. It's not a question of, okay, let's teach them a lesson or two and they will know and they will understand, okay? So I think it's the processes we're talking about. But the spotted light, that I personally see it. You asked about the Palestinians and how the Western press stresses all the time, this specific issue, and I do believe that there is a problem. Yes, we need to solve it, but certainly it is not the root of all problems in the Middle East. Certainly it's not the only problem of the Middle East. And if we are talking about oppressed minorities, then I would say that the blunt lies of those who were supposed to represent the values of democracy and the spread of the democracy to the Middle East, this is absolutely phenomenal. People who in the West, in the think tanks, in the newspapers, forgot about minorities all around the Middle East. The Kurds, whoever talked about them, who dedicated speeches to them in the Council of the Human Rights in the United Nations. Biafra, the African minority. We can talk forever about the slaves in the Sudan, in the south of Sudan, during all of the 90s. There was slavery in Sudan. Who spoke about that? Who wanted to intervene there? Just like Clinton intervened in the Balkans. Who thought to intervene there? Who thought to intervene for the sake of the oppressed Lebanese who were oppressed by the Syrian army? That, just like Saddam did to Kuwait, this is what Assad did to Lebanon. Okay, so about this, there's a lot of hypocrisy there. This industry of hypocrisy. It doesn't say, however, that we in Israel here, we do not have a problem with the Palestinians. Of course we do. Okay, but when I read in the Guardian, the number 1,110, article about what the situation in the West Bank or in Gaza, which is indeed horrible in Gaza, yes, less so in the West Bank, that I'm saying, don't you want to travel, for example, just for once, to cover the situation in Djibouti, in Sudan, in Syria, in Lebanon, and to ask questions about what's happening there? Okay, it's not aboutism. I'm not saying, so what about the other countries? It's just obvious, realization of the political map in which we have politicization of the issue, and the politicization is so high right now, yes, that, basically nobody speaks about anything. Did you see ever human rights march in any capital in the West for the sake of the Syrian Kurds who are being butchered right now, with the defendants of the Western values against ISIS and also against Assad's army? No, nobody, not even one. They are, trying to knock every single door in the West, because I established the pro-Kurdish lobby in the Knesset, so I know all of them. They come to me and they ask me, so why cannot we get meetings with the congressmen, with senators on the Hill? I said to them, I don't know. I cannot help you with this because I try to call them too, and they are simply not interested. Okay, they do not read it. For us, for Israel, there is actually an opportunity. There is an opportunity in change. These oppressed minorities that were shut for ages, they were made non-existent. They were sinful. With them, we can have a dialogue. With them, we can have a cooperation. With Kurds, I think it's obvious what we have to do. We did it in the 60s. Of course.
South Sudan too.
South Sudan too. And this is the periphery alliances. What we used to call them in the 50s and the 60s. Okay. So it's about time to reevaluate these periphery alliances, because these minorities are becoming very strong and they are crucial for us. Not only for finding friends in the Middle East, which we are part of, but also when we are talking about Iran. Kurds are the only way to basically stop, the spread of the Iranian corridor from Iran to Damascus and then to Lebanon. Okay, if we are talking about Africa, then again, these ports will belong either to Iran or they will be cooperation with us. So again, who said it was לא משנה מה גויים יאמרו, משנה מה היהודים יעשו. Doesn't matter what the Gentiles will say. It's important what we will do. And then again, we are talking about Israel here. I'm not in charge about, Guardian or any other publications, but I do think that the Israeli journalists should also, be more attentive to the other aspects of what is happening in the Middle East. The politicians have to be more attentive about it. And then we must, think that it's all not so grim, and we have the democratic in Muslim societies. Yes, and Kurds are Muslim society. They are Muslims. It's a fact of life. Yes, but we have significantly more openness there to Western values, to democracy, to even feminism. We are talking specifically about Syrian Kurds than in practically any other society here in the Middle East. So we have a few questions more. Or
just one footnote, if
yes.
I may. Israeli Muslim society is also democratic, not only democratic. Second, you said about the religious establishment in the Arab world. I want to tell you about Egypt. The chief mufti of Egypt, Jadha, gave a several fatwa, religious opinion, after the Camp David, approving peace with Jews and Israel, provided the Jerusalem issue is settled. So this is very important.
Yes, he was given an order by President Sadat at the
Okay,
time.
but as Moran said, the state is here powerful.
No, I spoke to all those people. No, I mean, don't live in a self-delusion state. Absolutely not.
I don't accept your definition.
Try to draw some conclusion from the last 70 years. There is a problem.
I did already.
We should do everything in our power to advance peace. I agree with you completely, Bala. Absolutely, yes. But we have tried. Now, about, just a moment, about normalization in general and in Egypt. I came to Egypt as an ambassador in 96, 3 years after Oslo agreements. About Israeli investors opened about 10 societies, companies, and they started working. But conditions were so bad to renew a visa or to being followed by the security that after 2 or 3 years, all of them closed, a part of Delta. Delta is the only factory, Israeli factory, that really works, still functions in Egypt. So we have tried, we've done everything.
And Jordan?
Okay.
Just a moment. I tell you a story that you will understand. Just a moment. Last sentence. Okay. In that journalist, no, there are no journalists, so I can tell you a secret. It was, I think, about 98 or 99. I decided we worked so strong for, we have been working so strong from normalization, and nothing came. And all those new Israeli initiatives really went in the wrong direction because of security. So I decided to go to the Prime Minister of that time. I'll not give you his name. And I told him, Mr. Prime Minister, I would like to do something. After all, there is peace, a long time, 30 years of peace, let's do something. Let Egypt and Israel benefit from all that. I propose to bring to you a very important delegation of investors and industrialists from Israel who try to do something together, really very big, beyond what has been done till now. He said, Palestinian problem. I told you, okay, Palestinian problem. 30 years of peace with you did not solve the problem. So, I mean, you don't have any lever on us. So let us go forward, okay, and do something. And it was the beginning of the high-tech. So he told me, listen, I tell you the truth. And this is a Prime Minister of Egypt telling me toward the end of the year, toward the end of the year 2000, he's telling me, listen, our future, the future of Egypt, is not in industry, but in agriculture and tourism. I almost fell from my chair. A prime minister doesn't understand what is economy, what is creation. Creation is industry and high-tech. Not agriculture is important, tourism also, but you cannot develop a country without industry. So it led to nothing. But this is a real story. Don't write this, okay?
We have to wrap it up. So just to the aftermath, okay? So I think that it was quite a good representation of variety of views on 70 years of history between Israel and Arabs. We have extremely negative and pessimistic view, of course, based on personal stories and personal accounts and study and research. Hopefully, I can tell you that prime ministers, they come and go. Also in Egypt and also in Israel, by the way, okay? It can happen.
But Islam is still there.
Maybe. But on Islam, we have a more optimistic kind of view based also on studies and research and personal experience of Indonesia about developments also here in Israel and in many other Arab and Muslim societies, across the world. We have there very, I think, reasonable analysis of what is happening right now with the Gulf countries. Opportunity, yes, very limited. Glass ceiling because of something that is not moving right now, and this is the Israeli-Palestinian project. And if I can just add that there are plenty other opportunities that might present themselves in the future years. We have the Me Too movement also in the Arab countries now, Me Too Mosque it's called. This is a uprising against Islam, against patriarchy, against the traditional way of thinking of what Islam is. There are people who are taking charge of their lives, mostly women, mostly young, mostly minorities, okay? But if we will be wise enough, we and countries in the West, to use these opportunities, perhaps we'll be better off in another 70 years. Thank you so very much for your attention.
70 years.
Yes?
So we're done.
I just want to say thank you to the distinguished panelists. Excellent